joining us today on Time Space Visualiser. It is my enormous pleasure to welcome now two very well-known names, but you may not necessarily know the faces, given their enormous amount of Dalek work on the new series. It is my enormous pleasure to welcome Barnaby Edwards and Nicholas Pegg. Gentlemen, how are you both?
Hello
very
there.
well, thank you.
All the better for seeing you, Andy. We're very well, thank you. How are you? You keeping well?
Not too bad. Keeping relatively well in these odd times. How are things ticking over for you guys?
I think we're both gradually going insane. But the advantage, of course, of being a Dalek is that you're used to being in an enclosed, confined space for hours and weeks on end,
being ignored by everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty normal, really.
Yeah.
No, I mean, seriously though, I guess for people in our line of work, in a way, I think we're a lot luckier than some people because it hasn't been that massive an upheaval. You know, people who are used to going into work, you know, when you're an actor, you're kind of used to hanging around at home waiting for something.
Yes, very true.
So yeah, no, we're doing all right. Thank you very much indeed. We're, you know, doing lots of gardening. Well, I am anyway, because I'm the gardener in this outfit. He's been doing lots of cooking. I've been doing lots of eating.
Oh.
So no, we're you know, one way or another, we're keeping out of mischief. Yeah, we've had a bit of work, and we've got a home studio, so a bit of audiobook work has been done, that sort of thing. Yeah.
I was going to ask about that. Actually, so you're set up at home for that because you're both prolific in terms of reading and performing for audiobooks, not just Big Finish, but well beyond that. Is that so? That's sort of ticking over quite nicely, I guess, if you've got a home studio set up.
Yeah, it's the only. I mean, we're very, very fortunate because it is the only kind of part of the industry that's still going, and is indeed sort of. You know, I don't want to be sort of over dramatic about these things, but there is a kind of onus in times of trouble like this. You know, people do need to be entertained, and really the kind of the torchbearer at the moment is the audio world. You know, Big Finish are doing recorded entirely in lockdown multicast stuff. We're all doing stuff in our own home studios, and then they're editing it together. I'm on my 4th unabridged audiobook since lockdown started. But you know, putting more material out there to entertain people. I think is actually
it's nice thing to be able to be a part of.
An important thing to do as well, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is the only part of the industry that's kind of, you know, going.
And also the other thing is, as it happens, when lockdown started, we were bang in the middle of a quite big project for Audible that we've both been working on.
Right.
It's going to sound awful now, but I'll tell you about it anyway. The thing called the Warringham Chronicles, which is a dramatization of a series of novels by a German novelist called Rebecca Garblay. Although she's German, she's English history, so it's a kind of medieval blockbuster. And I've been working on the script, the dramatization. Barnaby's been directing it. It's got a wonderful cast, Miriam Margulies, all sorts of people. But the reason I'm telling you about it is that we were bang in the middle of that. So we are still actually working on that. The first 3 installments have already been recorded of 6. And we're currently in the middle of post-production on part 3. So we're busy listening to edits of that and so on. So that's kind of a big ongoing thing. So one way or another, we mustn't grumble. We've been pretty busy, actually.
Mm. Good. It's good to hear, and it's good to hear that it sort of remains uninterrupted. The project that you were working on. You talked about that working together. That's something you've done quite a lot of. Certainly in audio and with Big Finish. I know you've had crossovers there. Is that something you enjoy working together?
Can't stand it. Oh God, it's a nightmare. No. Awful. No, we love it. It's lovely. Obviously, we do lots of stuff on our own, you know, separately as well, go off and do a theatre job or whatever it might be. But no, we love it when we get the chance to work together. And that's, you know, Doctor Who has always been such a joy like that. As you say, you mentioned Big Finish and things like that, but also obviously doing the show, going along and Daleking away together is, no, it's just, it's a joy, isn't it? It's just,
yeah.
I mean, it is going to work and it is quite hard work sometimes, but it's also just a pleasure, you know. It's just a lovely thing to do, and be able to do it together. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And also you have a kind of shorthand, which means that a lot of stuff gets done more quickly and more efficiently. Have a shared reference, just as you do with any work colleague that you've worked with for a number of years.
One waggle of the sink plunger can speak volumes across the studio.
I was talking to a couple of the cyber chaps a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about knowing at a glance who was in which costume by the tiniest little inflection and movement and these kinds of things. Are you able to know which Dalek is which in that scenario?
A little bit harder.
It's a little bit harder if it's just the face, to be honest. But for the moves, we can generally tell, yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we're doing the show, we rehearse initially with our tops off. I don't mean our Daleks on. Nobody would want to see the... No. But obviously, we know where each other is because we can see each other. And so we kind of have that knowledge. But then when the tops get put on, what will sometimes happen is the director will suddenly change his or her mind and we'll go, oh, hang on a minute, that Dalek used to be over there. And suddenly everything gets switched around like chess pieces. And then you're going, oh, I don't know who's who now. But it's okay. We just shout at each other and say, who's that in there? Is that Barney? And it kind of works out. Yeah. But yeah, a little bit hard. There's not much body language, frankly, once we're inside.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess significantly less than the cyber dudes hanging around. Which was the first that you worked on together in terms of being Dalek operators?
1993.
Yeah, if you're going to include...
I certainly am.
Well, that's the first time.
That's canonical.
That is canonical. It is canon. So that was the first time. I mean, to give you the hopefully very quick potted version of what happened there, that was our first time either of us being involved in being monsters on Doctor Who. And it came about, we were at drama school together way back in the Cretaceous period, and we had actually quite recently left drama school at the time, about a year before, and we'd done a few theatre jobs and this and that. But anyway, my old friend Gary Russell rang up one day, who I'd known for years, and he said, do you know a guy called Kevin Davis? And I said, I sort of think I know who he is, but don't really know him. Anyway, Gary put me in touch with Kevin, who was at this point starting to shoot the documentary, the 30 Years in the TARDIS thing. So Kevin gave me a ring and said, Gary Russell tells me that you're a good tall chap and you'd be a good Cyberman, because it was originally a Cyberman. And obviously I said, yes, I will be a fantastic Cyberman. When do you want me? I'll be there. And so the first thing either of us actually did on that show was I went and was the cyber leader, I'll have you know, coming down the steps in front of St. Paul's Cathedral with Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing we did, and that was great fun. That was sort of 5:30 on a Sunday morning in October, and it was great. And then a few days later, Kevin phoned me up again, and he said, right, that was good. Now we're going to do Daleks on Westminster Bridge. Do you think that you could fit inside a Dalek? And I am 6'3", but I wasn't going to say no, was I? Of course I wasn't. So I said, yes, of course I can fit inside a Dalek. At which point he said, now we've got a whole load of Daleks and we need a load of other people. Can you recommend anyone else? At which point I recommended Barnaby. So there we were on Westminster Bridge at 5:30. It may even have been the very next Sunday. I can't remember. But again, it was 5:30 on a Sunday morning. And that was it. That was our first time as Daleks. And then we went on to do some in the studio as well on that, didn't we?
With Roy Castle.
Roy Castle popped in from the next door studio. That's right, he did. Yeah. Because we were on that mock-up set of the Evil of the Daleks.
Evil of the Daleks, yes, yeah.
With Fraser and Debbie and various people.
It was also next door. They built a sort of corridor from the Dalek movie as well, sort of tilted.
That's right. Because Jenny Linden was there and Roberta Toby.
Couldn't get rid of Jenny Linden. No.
Oh, nightmare. That was great. It was an amazing time there. So that was 1993, sort of like a lifetime ago. So then fast forward to 2004 when the show was coming back, and our names were already marked, as it were. And Nick Briggs was down to do the voice for Dalek. And when it came up, who was going to operate the Dalek, initially the sole Dalek in Dalek, we were marked men. And Barney went in and did that episode, of course. And then when it came to the end of the season, the Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways one, I'm delighted to say they called me up as well, and we've been doing it ever since. And I think I can say, am I right in saying, because you did some maths?
I did some maths because I'm obsessed with it. But we are still Dalek operators.
If we're counting 30 years in the TARDIS, the fact that now, obviously, spoilers, full well we're not allowed to say too much about this, but we do know, it has been announced, hasn't it, that Revolution of the Daleks is going to be the next episode. Well,
yes.
As of the lovely time we had shooting Revolution of the Daleks that we're not allowed to tell you anything about, we are, I think, the longest running Dalek operators.
Yes.
I think we've just beaten John.
27 years. Raise everyone at home and everyone available. Raise a glass or a teacup and let's cheer that. That's absolutely.
I've got a sneak glass of lockdown wine here. So
I should have got the wine. I should have gone for the wine. At the very least, I could have filled the mug with wine. It would have been the best way. So yeah, well, I think that's a pretty fantastic stat. I have to ask, therefore, were you in any way Doctor Who fans before any of this took place?
Well, I had watched it as a kid, as everyone kind of watched it. I grew up in the 1970s, and also the decades afterwards. I wasn't just in the 70s. So yeah, I think I started watching. The first memories are probably of Pertwee, but really Tom Baker was kind of my Doctor. So I was a big sort of Doctor Who fan then. I mean, I had some Target novelizations and some of the little dolls or whatever they are. And then I promptly sort of, I'm afraid I transferred onto Blake Seven. And then
that's allowed.
Allowed. And then I sort of just did other things. I kind of forgot about Doctor Who. And then when we were at drama school together,
then you met this idiot.
That's when the disaster happened.
Because
and I was made to watch the Web Planet.
Because for my part, I wasn't any kind of Doctor Who fan. I was every kind. I was a total card-carrying. I was a member of the DWAS when I was a teenager. I was there at the Longleat convention in 1983, aged whatever I was a teenager, 14, 15, something like that. I used to write things in fanzines that, people can dig up and find deeply embarrassing. I had some monumentally embarrassing letters published in Doctor Who magazine when I was about, again, same sort of period, early 80s. Don't go and look for them. Why am I telling you this? Shocking one saying there should never be a female Doctor. Honestly, it was like an idiot grenade. I had to throw myself on it when Jodie Whittaker was announced, because of course a female Doctor is wonderful, but I was 14 at the time and my bits hadn't dropped. But anyway, so I was a huge Doctor Who fan all the way. I in the golden days of pirate videos, I was there. I went to the tavern and all that jazz. So I was a huge fan. So when eventually it came around that it was possible to actually become involved in the series, I mean, it was just incredible. I mean, I've often thought if I could go back in a TARDIS and tell my 8-year-old self that one day I'd be a Dalek, my 8-year-old self would just burst. Well, actually, no, my 8-year-old self would probably just think, who's this weird bald person who's turned and call the police. Just amazing. Honestly, it's just such a joy to be involved in something that I loved so much when I was a kid. When Barney and I first met many years ago, I guess I was at that stage, I was saying, go on, have a look at this, and putting in dreadful black and white copies of the Silurians that went like that with the screen and everything. But
there is surely no dreadful copy of the Silurians. No. I will not hear a word against it.
And it's really hard, not just from sort of Stockholm syndrome, it's really hard when you watch old Doctor Who not to fall in love with it.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely adore. I adore stuff that I never saw. I adore Hartnell and things like that. Just wonderful. And I think the world of Doctor Who, not just the fictional world of Doctor Who, but the world of Doctor Who fandom is a fantastic place to
really
be.
Is.
I think it's a hugely. I mean, of course, there are people who rotten apples in there, but generally speaking, it is a hugely supportive, inclusive environment, and very inspiring. I think the number of fans that we meet at Doctor Who conventions who, went on to become astrophysicists because of Doctor Who, or went on to become costume designers or writers or
teachers,
all sorts, so much stuff, or indeed genuine doctors and nurses.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think you get better money in EastEnders, but you would never get this kind of level of love from a show like being in EastEnders. So I think it's a really special show to be involved in.
It really is. It really is. And like you say, I mean, that's always on show at events when we can meet you guys. I know saw you guys at Utopia last year, and we had a fantastic time. And people are always so grateful. I've sat with actors who worry that people won't want to come and get an autograph or won't be interested in them. Nonsense. That fear is always put to one side, because people are interested, people love the program, and therefore people love to kind of share their passion for the program with those that have been in it. And you two are certainly no exception to that rule. I saw you chatting and enjoying the time that you spent there. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think we're very lucky.
Yes, we are. It's a very positive environment.
Extremely lucky. It's lovely, and there's nothing more. Going to a Doctor Who convention is just a lovely thing to do, because it's hanging out with Doctor Who fans is wonderful. They're lovely, clever, funny, intelligent people who've, you know, got interesting things to talk about, and it's just great. It's a joy. It's a, you know, just to sort of, it's you know, we go up and do our panel and do autographs and whatever, but just to sort of sit in the bar later on and just have a chat, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's a lovely thing to do. It's a lovely community. It really is. Whether it's right. You know, a small little thing in a pub somewhere, or whether it's some massive great convention with thousands of people, all of those things. Yeah, it's lovely. It's a real, you know, God, sounding, this is like something out of a fortune cookie, isn't it? But no, it really is genuinely lovely. It's, you know, it's, yeah.
It absolutely is. Now, at an event earlier this year, I got the chance to do something I'd never done before, which at my age is few and far between those opportunities now. But I got to finally sit in and operate a Dalek. I won't lie, at that moment, there's a video somewhere at that moment of me, you know, physically or otherwise, taking my hat off to you guys. It was far, far harder work to do all those various things and all the different elements of that, let alone just keeping it moving, that I was in awe. How did you guys find it when, on that day on Westminster Bridge, when you were first operating a Dalek, that first time? Was it what you were expecting or not?
Definitely not. Sort of twice over not for me, because I got into this beautiful fan-made Dalek on Westminster Bridge, and it was all chic inside and beautifully lined and perfectly done. And then there was a knock on the outside, and Kevin said, "We can't fit Nick in one of the smaller ones, so can he go in your one?"
Going back to the thing about me being 6'3", yeah.
Yes.
The Rolls-Royce fan-made Dalek, and get into one that was made by some aunt from a Dickens, which had a terrible wheel and a sort of wonky thing. So yeah, when you see the final footage of it, the sad little Dalek at the end,
you're
the
like
tiny one,
second from the back or something, going, come on!
I had kind of the sort of baptism of fire at that point.
But actually, probably very good work experience.
Yes, it was.
Many years later, when we were doing the oh God, I always call it the Sorcerer's Apprentice. You know the one I mean. The Magician's. Oh, the Witch is Familiar. That one. That
I was then going to say the Magician's Nephew, the Silver Chair.
Yeah.
The Lion, the Witch, and the
Lion, the Witch, and the Water.
Yes, that's
another.
That two-parter with Davros. I do apologise, Stephen, if you're watching. The one with the titles. But anyway, that of course had the special weapons Dalek in it, which for that episode had been specially fitted up for the first time with a flashing light thing, so that when it spoke, it could flash on and off, which it hadn't had before. But that meant that inside its thing was just equipment, and there was nothing to look out of, was it? And that was Barnaby.
Yeah.
He was inside there, and there was literally, you know, normally visibility's poor inside of
absolutely. Yeah.
A little bit there that you can look out of, like looking out, like sitting inside a pillar box and looking out through there, and there's a bit of mesh, and hopefully they can't see your eyes. But that's what you've got usually. But inside this, it was literally just solid inside.
Yeah.
And we were having to go down a curvy corridor. It's the bit where they're looking for Davros when the Doctor has pulled out of his chair and they find him on the floor.
Absolutely.
So, special weapons, and then I was in a kind of normal bronze Dalek behind. And because it was a curved corridor, and because there was no way that anyone could go in there and guide the Dalek or anything, because it would have been picked up in the shot, we were reduced to literally to me shouting at the top of my voice, because I was inside a Dalek and Barney was inside another Dalek. But I was the only person who could see Barney in real life, if you see what I mean, because the camera was over there. So I was literally shouting, left a bit, right a bit, and obviously these things were cut out. But when you look at the final episode, it's there for 2.5 seconds. But oh gosh, that was a fun afternoon, wasn't it? As you just collided with things, because you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. So the special weapons Dalek and I have a very, a very fraught relationship.
That was special. But no, I mean, it is. I mean, as you said, Andy, you know, you've had a go at it. It's fun, but it is actually surprisingly hard. And if you're required to do, you know, a precision move, as you often are, if you have to sort of spin 180 degrees round and connect your plunger onto a particular control on the control panel or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's tricky, and it does take a little bit of getting used to. But you know, we've done it quite a lot now over the years, and got reasonably good at it. But of course, there are always the occasional time when we have to go for take 2 or even take 3. Amazing entrance.
For those people at home who haven't had that benefit of sitting in there. Now, we've heard in days of yore, some of the, before your time, some of the Dalek operators have described how it was. It sounds very creaky and old-fashioned. I think a lot of people think it must be a lot easier than that now. I suspect it's not. So do you want to describe how you actually move each of those things from inside? How are you making a thing go up and down? How are you making things waggle?
Well, there is a sort of a lovely and generous idea in the fan world that it's better now than it was 55 years ago. That is not the case.
No.
Fan-made Dalek conventions are far nicer inside than the actual.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, of course, the BBC is putting the money where it's going to be best spent, which is on the outside of the Dalek. Outside of the beautiful Daleks that are sitting behind you, they look sensational. But I'm afraid the corollary of that is that they don't spend any money on the inside. And
quite right too. It would be a scandal if license fee payers' money was spent in making us in any way comfortable inside those things. So fair enough.
Aside the jacuzzi and the minibar, there's literally nothing in there.
Yeah, I mean, okay, there's an optic with a bottle of vodka in it, but that's okay.
If you see the Dalek, you have a look at the Daleks behind you. Okay, so all the little bobbly bits, the hemispheres on the outside, about halfway up.
These bits here,
At the level with the third one up, that's where a little plank is. There's just a wooden plank in there. The whole of the Dalek is open at the bottom. They don't have those little sort of lights on it. So at the front of the Dalek, there's one shopping trolley wheel. At the back of the Dalek, there are two shopping trolley wheels. And then there's the plank. You step into the Dalek, you stand on the plank, you sit down on the plank, and then you pull it along with your legs like a Flintstones car. And the Dalek goes. You have to make sure you get your balance right in the middle. Otherwise, the Dalek looks like some sort of cockney. It goes from side. Moving forward, prow leading, and then you've got the exterminator gun and the sucker are just like broom poles that go through the bit into the Dalek. So you've got them under your arms and you're moving them.
So you're holding on to those basically one in each hand while you're
Flintstoning.
So something that has changed in recent years is there are two different types of ways of controlling the dome. Okay,
right.
We do still have a lot of manual ones, which are the old-fashioned way. They used to always do it back in the old series, whereby you've got something hanging down, a piece of wood hanging down from above that just sort of bumps into your head when you're not holding onto it. You hold onto that and rotate it around, and that makes the dome with the eye go around. And when you pull it down, it goes up and down and so on like that. Okay. Obviously, you need three hands to use to do the gun.
Of course. And this,
but which you can't. And that, absolutely. But what has changed since the old series is that in addition to those, we do now have 2 or 3 super duper animatronically controlled domes, which means that a man with a remote control thing called Colin, there are other people and even men, but Colin's the chief one, stands off, behind the camera crew and controls the dome by remote control, which means that we are free to do the other things. But
generally, when you're going along and you're doing a sort of long shot like that, it's fantastic because you can operate these, and Colin will do the head at the same time.
And he's very, very good at it. The slight drawback with the animatronic ones is that they only go at one speed. They don't have fast or slow or whatever. So if the director wants to sort of whip its like round quickly, then that has to be a manual one, because the animatronic ones just go at that speed and that's it. But they are a great boon. The tricky thing about them when you're inside operating an animatronic one, the other tricky thing is that they make a huge amount of noise above your thing. Because if you can imagine it, there's these motors going when it goes.
Of course.
And of course, you are listening for the other actors' cues, for whatever your cue is to turn around and glide over there, or to come forward and say exterminate. If you can't hear what they're saying, because this thing above your head is going incredibly loudly in your ears, it very frequently drowns out what the other actors are saying. So you have to sort of use your sixth sense to work. You have to pay an awful lot of attention, don't you, at all times?
I'm just on my phone the whole
time. So can you hear you can kind of see the action. Can you hear what's happening? What about the other Daleks? I mean, how are you hearing Dalek voices within the studio? How does that work?
Well, I tend to avoid that whole issue by rehearsing, as Nick said, without, first of all, rehearse not even with the Daleks at all, just standing.
Yeah.
So once we've got the measure of the scene, we'll then get into the half of the Dalek, so it sort of separates halfway up, and then we'll run the scene through like that. And so we've kind of got the timing in our head by that point. And then pretty much thereafter it's lip reading, because of course modern technology, the sound, they want the sound really, really quiet and close for the other actors in the scene.
So you're talking about the human actors.
Yeah.
They're often talking very, very quietly. And
so you have to kind of lip read.
Really
of course.
And of course, as you know, of course, when a Dalek speaks, it's lights flash on and off. So that's another slightly funny thing, is that Nick Briggs, who of course is not on set, he's on set, but he's not literally in the room. He's behind the flats on his desk with his equipment. He has to switch from one Dalek to another to make sure the correct Dalek flashes on and off, because the lights are actually operated by his voice. His voice makes the lights flash with, and so we go through this funny little tech run thing every time we do a take, where Nick makes sure he goes 1 2 1 2 Dalek 3 1 2 1 2 to make sure that the correct Dalek is flashing on the correct lines, because of course once you're inside your Dalek, the one Dalek you can't see flashing or not flashing is you.
Of course.
So we are shouting at each other across the set, or shouting to the first assistant director saying, "Sorry, can you just confirm, are my lights flashing on that line?" And he goes, "Yeah, no, they're not. No, Nick, you've got something." Yeah. So we're having to do that the whole time to make sure the correct Dalek is flashing at the correct time. It's quite a... Daleks do take up quite a bit of studio time, because they're all these funny little technical things. But hopefully worth it in the end. Yeah. And the other thing that is tricky once you're inside them is it's amazing how quickly you can become physically disorientated, particularly if it's a wrap around a 360-degree set, which it quite often is these days. Because obviously in the olden days, the sets were very sort of almost like a theatre set, and the camera crew was all one side, all shot in one direction. But nowadays, they're very often three-dimensional. I'm going to be very careful with what I say, because I'm not allowed to do spoilers, but on the forthcoming Jodie Whittaker Dalek story, there was one particular set which was very three-dimensional and very sort of wraparound, because of the way that the director wanted to do the thing. The set had been designed to be completely 360. And that meant that once we were inside and we had to do these certain moves, come around a corner, go down a bit, round another bit, it was extraordinary how quickly if you slightly miscalculated the angle that you'd gone, you were suddenly facing completely the wrong direction, because you couldn't see through the little bit of window, which way am I facing now? I can't see any lights, I can't see the crew, I can't see anything, because I'm basically in this real environment that's 360 degrees. And it's amazing how...
We can only do fake. I can't do real.
But very impressive. But yeah, there was certainly one take there where we all headed off in the wrong direction and went, "Oh, we're over here. That was wrong. We'll have to do it again." Yeah, but we got there in the end. I think it's going to look very, very epic, this episode. Anyway,
is there anything, even a little tiny nugget of information that you can give us to keep us going?
It's got Daleks in it.
Okay.
Can we?
No.
I don't think so. I think it's more than
the Bandrel Ambassador's back.
Oh, I mean, obviously the Bandrel Ambassadors.
Well, I mean, that goes without saying, right? I mean,
it's the long-awaited Bandrel Ambassador and Plasmaton team up.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff.
Yeah. And when they wheeled on the Keller machine, I mean, I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want that back? Who would not want that back?
Exactly. They wheeled it on and wheeled it straight back off.
Absolutely. Straight up, get it off. No, we had a great time. It's obviously we're not allowed to tell you anything about it, but no, it's good. It's quite an extravaganza. It's a goodie.
I'm so glad we finished before lockdown kicked in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was because it was a while ago. I mean, I think we can say that without any. It was shot before Christmas, and last autumn, so it's already quite a few months ago. I think that was purely a sort of production logistics decision, that they did it at the end of the shoot for the whole season, to because the crew were all present.
Everyone's there. Let's get on and get it done.
Yeah, so it was actually already a few months ago that we did it, so very much looking forward to seeing the outcome. But there was some quite exciting setups on that one. Good fun. Jodie,
it sounds like there is plenty for people to look forward to in that particular episode. Now, we have, unfortunately, gentlemen, come to the end of our time chatting, but I want to say a massive thank you. It's given quite an insight, I think, into people's ideas of what they may have expected a Dalek to be like on the inside. Not quite the same, but getting it from the horse's mouths, so to speak, has been wonderful. It's been absolutely excellent to chat to you both. Stay well. When this is all over, it would be lovely to chat face to face and have another meeting with some more lovely Doctor Who fans at an event in the future. In the meantime, stay well, gents, and keep working. It sounds like you're busy.
Thank you. Well, we look forward to all that. Look forward to seeing you again. Look forward to seeing all of you guys out there. And yeah, as you say, stay safe, keep well, everybody, and pleasure to talk to you. Cheers.
Thank you very much, everyone at home. A huge virtual round of applause for Barnaby Edwards and Nicholas Pegg. Thank you very much, gents. Thank you.